Welcome to the Tenaroo Foundation's webinar series. This session's topic is payments and credit. In this session, I will cover working with credit through refunds, convenience fees, and credit on file. I'll also look at the previous orders section of the user account in depth, and we'll go over the details of the cart and various payment methods that are available mainly to admins. I'd like to start with talking about what is credit. And we're going to look at a unit that has credit on file. And let me go back to this unit's account. We have a Klondike Derby, and my group can't attend anymore. They need to cancel. So I'm going to go through and cancel their registration, and they have paid in full for this. So when we get to the confirmation step, we can now see that this is creating credit. So the question is, what is this credit and how does it work? Credit is created when any part of an event registration or facility booking has been canceled or reduced. Sometimes that credit is immediately applied to a remaining balance on the event or trip, and other times, like now when there is no balance on that event or trip, it is unapplied and moved to generic credit. From there, credit can be used in several different ways, which I will go over in this webinar. It could be added to the account as credit on file. It could be absorbed through convenience fees, or it could be refunded to the group and removed from the Tenaroo system. So let's talk about when credit is added to the account. I'm going to finalize this now to add credit to the account. So we're going to add the $40 to this account as available credit. So I'm checking out, and we're going to keep it as add credit to account and add a note. And place the order. Now that this group has credit on file, there's a few different places where we can go to see this credit. We can look under the group's previous orders. If they have an event that they're actively registered for, we can see that at the bottom of their event invoice. And then we can also see this in several groups exports. This covers several reports that are pulled from different parts of the system. I want to show you now that we have two system reports that show credit on file, and these are the best reports to go to for looking for available credit. The first is the master groups export that has all of the groups in your system, and that will show you which groups have credit on file. We also have the groups with credit version of that report, which is the same data, only filtered to only groups that have credit on file. These reports are pulled in the system reports. These are currently generated in the Legacy Air app, which I will show in a future webinar. Also, under each event, we have a group's Excel export that shows registered groups and includes a column for available credit. And similarly for facilities, we have the group trips Excel report, which has a column for available credit. Lastly, we have the audit log, which shows the history of when and how credit is created and used throughout the account. When there is credit on file, that credit will be used first to pay for any other trip or event in the system. When the group makes the purchase themselves and goes through the cart, they're required to use credit available. But when an admin goes through the cart, you can optionally not use credit. And we'll talk about those after a while here. So let's talk more about this audit log report, since any changes that we make to payments and credit will be reflected here. The audit log is primarily designed to track any changes to how money is applied to your GL accounts, either recording a new payment or posting changes to how existing payments are applied. Secondarily, it's also designed to track any changes that either make credit or use credit. This report has a lot of detail, so I'll go through the different columns slowly and I'll show different examples of the kinds of things that I'm talking about today. There are many different use cases for generating and using this report. There are some accounting reasons. For example, it shows money moving in and out of GLs, and we will cover this in more depth for how credit transfers affect GLs and this will be in the bookkeeping and accounting webinar, so you can update your bookkeeping accordingly. A word of caution for now with the audit log. Don't try to use the raw audit log to do your reconciliation. We'll discuss other exports that are derived from the audit log that are a much better fit for that specific purpose. Another thing you can do with this report is you can track credit on file. The data here helps you to answer questions about why a unit has a certain amount of credit on file. This also helps you understand where the credit came from, so you can determine if any adjustment is necessary. As a part of this, you'll be able to see what money went to refunds or convenience fees, or perhaps what money got moved to a different event or trip. You can also use this report to view payment application. So what was the payment originally applied to, and what is it paying for now? That kind of information is in this report. As a quick note on that, for events, the invoice will also show a payment history over time, but simplified, specific to that event and without breaking everything down by GL account. The invoice is a really great place to start when you're researching payment history, and I discussed how to read that report in the Invoices, Transfers, and Cancellations webinar. The audit log is also good for just general change tracking. Which admin or end user made a change to the registration or trip? If the change affected money, you'll be able to see those changes in this log. This report is available for each group account as well as for the whole system. Only admins can pull these reports. Your end users won't see them as an option. Whether you are looking at the group audit log or the system audit log, you'll be able to see a full history of changes to money for the date range. The only difference between the two versions of the report is that the system audit log shows all transactions for the whole system, while the group audit log is filtered to a specific account. So now let's take a good look at the group audit log. This is generated under the group's previous orders. The default start date is 3 months in the past, but you can set this date as far back as you need to include all necessary records. Payment history is never deleted in Tentaroo, so you can pull data going back to the beginning of the group's payment history. For some of our councils, that is quite a long time ago. All right, so we can click Export to generate that file. And then I have one actually already set that I want to look at with you today. So I'm going to go through the different columns and explain how the data can be interpreted and combined to get the information that you need. First, I want to talk about the date added column. This is, quite simply, the date and time stamp of when the change happened. Then we have user type and username. These columns record which account processed the transaction in the cart. If the group did it, it will show group and then the group name. And if an admin did it, it'll say admin and then the admin's name. And this right here is a big reason why every admin should have their own account, which I will talk more about in the admin users webinar. The next column is type. And this will show you which type of event or trip item is affected by this row. Then we have credit. Credit tells you whether the transaction involved generic credit or not. So yes means credit was used to pay for something or it was newly created. And no means that this was a new payment or a refund, which you might consider as a payment going out. There are some exceptions to this if the payment amount is changed or if there's an overpayment, but I'll talk about that more later. The credit column will be a focal point for many of the changes I am showing you today, so I will refer back to this several times. Next, we have Order ID. The order number indicates the order that was affected by the change. For new payments, this will be the cart order ID. However, for change rows, this will be the past order that was affected by the change. In that case, the checkout order ID will usually be in the notes field. The only time that the checkout order ID won't be in the notes field is if the change happens outside the cart. For example, it was done on the admin side, or you've made a change under previous orders. Next, we have the item name. This is the specific item involved in the transaction, so you can identify where the money is applied or where it came from. Then we have the GL account name and number. These columns include information about which GL or general ledger account is assigned to the purchase for accounting purposes. Some of these are core system GLs that are automatically used for things like refunds or generic convenience fees, and I will talk about these specifically later on. Then we have the event and the event type. These columns display not only the event data, but also the facility data, such as the trip name and date in the event column, or the facilities and location in the event type column. Next, we have amount change, and this one's a big one, so I'm going to spend a few minutes on this. The values in this column indicate changes made to payments or credit. Like a positive value is a new payment or available credit that is applied to an item, and then a negative value is usually an amount unapplied due to a cancellation or a reduction. You compare this data with the credit column to see if these items were paid from available credit, and then you can also look over at the notes field to see where the money came from when credit was used. So let's look at a few specific examples of how to read this data together. So we're going to start with a new payment. These green rows are a new payment. First, we have the date and time stamp that are all the same. We also have credit equals no, and the order ID is all the same number. This indicates that all 5 of these rows were part of a new payment. When we look at the amount change column and we summarize those, we add those together, our sum is $2,500. That value adds up over here to our payment amount as the new payment of $2,500. Why are there 5 rows, you ask? Why not only one, since this was all the same payment? We see here that there's a row for each item that the payment paid for. In this case, 1 row per named participant in a Just Names event. Now let's look at the orange rows. Starting with the date and time stamp, these are all the same date and time, so these all went through the cart at the same time. This orange section is all relating to a refund. You can see then in the credit column that all of these values are yes, except for my final row, which is the refund itself. We'll talk about that in a moment. Most of these orange rows are reduction rows with negative amounts. And these rows are creating credit. As I mentioned before, change rows will list the order ID of the order that was affected by the change. So going back to my order ID column, column G, this order ID is the order that the credit came from, and that happens to be the order right above it. So that is where these changes occurred. To find the checkout order ID, we're going to go over to the notes field, and this is where the order took place. This is the new cart order ID. So this number ending in 207 is actually going to match our new payment item for a refund. I'm going to move
That's
on.
ending in 209.
Yes, ending in 209.
Yeah.
I don't know what I said, but it ends in 209. All right, I'm going to move on from this for now, but I'll be coming back and showing more examples later on in the webinar. All right, so we had ended before with the amount change column. And now let's look at the group first name and last name columns. These indicate the associated account on each transaction. Now, I'm looking at a group audit log, so all of these rows are the same, but they would be different in the system audit log. Then let's go and look at that notes field again. I know I've looked at this a couple of times already, but now I want to talk about it just a little bit more. Any notes that an admin adds to the cart order will appear in this field. If you need to add to your notes or update them, you can do so in the cart order under previous orders, and I'll show that later. This field also shows several automated messages, which will be covered later on as well. I've highlighted this field here in blue because it actually contains both. It has an admin note that NYLT is canceled, as well as where the change happened in the system. The last several fields on this report are all relating to the original payment. So this includes information about when the payment was made, when it was added, the type of payment used, and the payment ID. The payment ID is returned from authorized.net and is the specific identifier for that payment in their system. You can use this number to look up transactions in authorized.net when you need to check on anything or issue online refunds. Now, a trick for using this report, or really any report in Excel, is to use filters to find specific data points or to look at certain types of data. So I'm going to turn on filtering. Actually, I think I already had filtering turned on, but you can do that under sort and filter and just turn on filters. And then I'm going to give a couple of examples of how this is useful. So first, I'm going to go to the event column, and I am going to filter by a specific event. So we've been working with NYLT transactions, so I'm going to filter this down to just NYLT. With this filter in place, you can quickly review any changes that affected money for that event, for that registration, like seeing who was credited for fees for a class that was deleted. I'm going to clear that filter and show one more. My next example of this is filtering by the order ID. Maybe I want to see all of the changes that happened in order that ends in 975. That's this first one. So let's look for 975. And now, beyond the two orders that we were already looking at, you can see any transactions that affected the money that came in for order ending in 975. All right. Now that we've introduced the audit log and explained the bits and pieces and some moving parts there, let's transition to talking about convenience fees and refunds. There are a couple of different ways to apply cancellation fees in Tentaroo. The best ways to process convenience fees are by using an event-specific product or a location-specific facility. Specific convenience fees allow you to keep money associated with the original event or facility purchase. You can assign it to the GL that you want to keep that money on, and then also keep the money on the original event or trip, so it's all tracked with your budget for that event. This helps you communicate reasons for fees with your users as well, because you can put notes in to tell them what happened and name it such a way that they know what that fee was for. I've covered these in other webinars. The event-specific convenience fees are in the financial adjustments for events webinar, and facility-specific convenience fees are covered in the reserving and managing facility bookings webinar. Another way to process these fees, especially when you aren't sure of the source of the credit, is to use a generic convenience fee through previous orders. The generic version of this is useful for older credit that needs to be absorbed without a specific source. To absorb credit through a generic convenience fee, you'll go to the group's previous orders and enter the convenience fee amount in the convenience fee field. Then you'll want to click Add to Cart to add that change to the cart. So now you've said, this is how I want to use this credit. In the checkout, you can see that this is our convenience fee and we're using credit to pay for it. And then, of course, you want to add some good notes here to explain what's going on. All right, and then we place the order to finalize that convenience fee. And now when we look at the group's audit log, just a second. We can see that the convenience fee has been added to this account. And the credit column says, yes, we used credit. It's labeled as a convenience fee. And we're using a product type of transaction for this, or type of item. And then the GL assigned for these is GL11. It's one of our core system GLs. It's always 11 for generic convenience fees. The amount change is a positive $20 to indicate that credit has been used on this transaction. Our note is here. Let's expand that a little bit. And so we have the note that I added, as well as an automated message saying where this order was completed. This is the cart order. Back in column G, the order number here is the order the money came from. This is where that change was applied. All right, now let's talk about convenience, or we just talked about convenience fees. Now let's talk about refunds. A refund can be started in two ways. First of all, if you have reduction items in your cart resulting in a negative cart total, you can choose to process a refund as part of the checkout process. In this case, the payment types shown will be add credit to account or at cancel other. If you add the credit to the account, it stays on as available credit for the future. If you post at cancel other, you're adding a refund to the system saying that the money has left the building. We're going to select at cancel other to post a refund and adding a good note. And then we'll place the order to finalize that transaction. It's for whatever event I had in the cart. And so now that credit has been processed, and The 120 from that transaction has left the building as a refund. Now, looking at the audit log for that change, here's our refund line again saying that we have sent money out the door. Credit is no because this is a payment. It's not a credit applied to something in the system. And this money is no longer available for a group to apply to anything else. Second, if there is available credit on file from a past reduction, you can add a refund item to the cart to use up that credit. This is similar to adding a generic convenience fee because it's done under previous orders, and we'll add the $20 to the refund amount field. This is the amount that I am refunding back to the group at this time. We'll add that to the cart, and this new item is now going to use up the last of the available credit for this unit. So in the cart, we can see the refund amount is $20, and we're using credit to pay for it. And in this case, the only payment type option is at council other to post the refund. So we'll add a good note here. And post that refund. We'll place that order so now the credit has left the building there as well. However you post the refund, that process uses the credit on file to note that the money has left the Tentaroo system to be returned to the group. However, it does not, in and of itself, return money to the group. That still needs to be done through the council's normal refund methods, like issuing a refund check, posting a deposit into the unit's account at the council office, or an online refund via the credit card processor like Authorize.net or Stripe. For credit card refunds, we have a page on the admin manual that has more information on how the process works. Please reach out to us if you need individual guidance on managing your credit or refunds. All right, so I showed earlier a little bit of how the refunds show up on the audit log, but let's look at that one more time. So with an online refund, let's go to the bottom here. With a refund, we have credit equals no. This is a payment back to the group. The order ID in column G is the cart order ID like with other payments. Then we have that the item is a refund and it's a product, and it's being associated with a GL10. The amount change here is -20 to indicate the negative payment amount that is going out, and our note is shown along with an automated note that gives more information about where the credit came from. All right, I'm going to switch back to our user account and let's talk a little bit more about managing your past orders. I've touched on the previous orders section several times, but now I want to really dive into that section with you. The previous orders section is an easy way to view past orders and pull receipts in case you need to resend one. However, it only shows the current status of what the payment is applied to, so if you need to pull a receipt, it's best to do that quickly. You can also use previous orders to add notes to an order or update dates, and I'll get more into why you might want to make changes like that in just a moment. So looking at the previous orders here in the middle, each one of these cards represents an order. Not necessarily a payment because you can put something through the cart with no payment and it will still show up as an order on this screen. Each one of these cards includes dates, amounts, and notes. Clicking on an order will bring it up in greater detail. And this is where you can generate a receipt or view items that are currently in this order. The Admin Manage button allows the administrator to update notes and make various changes to the order. So let's walk through the possible changes and when you might need to make them. The first field is the date field. You can use this to change the order date, such as to backdate a payment. Backdating is useful when you want to honor a payment at an earlier registration rate. For example, let's say I have a group that postmarked a payment during the early rate period, but it was received in the office after the cutoff date for the base rate. I can change the order date to the date that the payment was postmarked, so the system will treat it as early money. In this case, I would also need to recalculate pricing on their registration to reapply that money as early. The original date the payment was entered is still preserved in the database, but now the group will get more participants at the lower rate. This date can also be changed by an admin while the payment is being applied in the cart, and I will show you where to do that later on. When you're managing an order, you can also edit or update notes, as I mentioned before. Having good notes is so important to communicate the circumstances behind the admin action. And this information is for your end users as well as yourselves, your fellow team members, your auditors. So I will say that over and over and over again that the notes section is so important. And the notes field is only admin field. Your users don't see that field. Next, I want to discuss payment amount changes and payment deletions, which are also things that you can do within the previous orders. For at council other offline payments, it is possible to change the total payment amount, although there are some caveats to be aware of here. The main reason you may need to change the total payment amount is when the payment was entered incorrectly. Like you've typed the wrong digit or you added an extra digit by mistake. However, changing a payment amount is going to look odd on the audit log because the changes are recorded as adjustments to credit rather than to the payments themselves. Anytime you change a payment amount, you will see, let me see, I've got an example for you. You will see that credit equals yes, the order where the payment change was made, GL15. And then you will also see in the amount change, perhaps the opposite value of what you were expecting to see. So in this case, I reduced a payment by $100. And the positive $100 is what I will see when I reduce a payment. And this is saying that credit was used for this. You might expect to see this recorded as a negative amount change, minus $100, because I decreased the original payment, but this change is using credit from reductions to what that money was originally applied to, and will thus appear as a positive amount change in the audit log. And in the case of increases to payment amounts, what you might expect to see as a positive amount change to increase the total payment will actually be shown as a negative value or newly created credit. And I am slightly confused by this myself. So when when you're dealing with needing to adjust a payment, it can be cleaner to completely delete an incorrect payment and start over, even if there's just a small mistake to the payment amount entered. So the best practice for both online and offline payments, we'll talk more about online payments in a minute, is to delete the payment if a change to the payment amount is needed for any reason. Then you can replace it with a new payment for the correct amount. So let's walk through the process here. Let me say that I accidentally entered an at council other payment for $100 too much. So let's go back up to a more recent order. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and use this one. This is a good example of an offline payment posted in the council office, and it was just $100 too much. So the first thing I'm going to do is update my notes. All right, so I am adding my note here, and oh wait, no, this was a deletion. My apologies. Okay, and then we're going to delete the payment, and now we're going to see a warning here. And this will explain what's going to happen in this case is that we are removing all of the items and it's going to set the payment to 0. And then this cannot be reversed. So we'll click continue to finalize that change. And this removes all of the items from the order. And then for offline payments, it'll reduce the total payment amount to 0. And I'll talk about what happens with credit card payments in just a little bit. Next, we're going to go back to the original event that was applied to, and that is week 2 of summer camp. And now I need to make an adjusted payment of $900 because that's how much their check was for. So then we would go back to the cart and enter in the necessary details. And then you can also backdate your order to when it was originally received to make sure they're still getting credit for their payment on time. And this is where one would adjust that order date to be the correct date. All right, and then we'll click Place Order to finalize that new payment. Now, in the audit log, you'll still see a negative payment amount change row. However, it's easier to understand the full picture because the new payment with the correct amount will be shown on new lines after that. Let's see, I don't think I had an example of that generated. So let's just take a quick look there. Bear with me just a moment while I make this readable. Okay. When we delete a payment,
Can you also expand out the first couple columns and just take your time with the formatting.
okay.
The first column as well. Thank you. Sorry. Just yeah.
Thought I had the first column. Okay. All right. So you'll still see a negative payment amount change, which is showing as a positive integer, but it's an amount change of reducing that original payment to nothing. However, it's easier to understand the full picture because the new payment with the correct amount will be shown on new lines after that. This can be less confusing than just editing the original payment amount because fresh money, fresh payments, will be shown as non-credit lines in the audit log. So in this case, we have credit equals no. So this is a new payment. This is how it always should have been. Regardless of how you fix the payment amount, you'll see the current payment amount in column W. Let's go find column W. So in this case, our new payment is $900, and the one that we deleted was originally $1,000, and now it's marked as 0. There are a few other examples where you might want to delete a payment, such as if an e-check payment has bounced, where you'll want to follow the same process for deleting the payment. but you will not need to replace it with a new payment unless you already have a new payment from the group to apply. You can also delete a payment when the payment was entered entirely in error, like it got applied to the wrong account when you were doing a batch entry, entering a lot of payments in a row, or maybe you added it twice by mistake. In those instances, you would just delete the payment and not replace it with a new payment. Now, circling back around to the online credit card payments. So, changes to the payment in this case really only need to be done in the rare situation of the user has posted a chargeback. With an online payment, we know that the original payment amount isn't incorrect, so you wouldn't, and in fact couldn't, change the payment amount. That credit card payment amount is set. If someone does go with a chargeback, you can use the delete button to remove all the order items. But unlike the offline payment example, the credit card payment is not deleted. So the credit is still available on the account. Let me see if I have a credit card payment where I can show that. Here we are. So in this case, we need to delete the payment. We would click Manage, add a note, and then delete the payment. Now this is also going to give us a warning box, a dialog box, but this is going to be different from the offline credit or offline payment deletion. The big difference here is that with a credit card payment, the payment itself is not deleted. The order items are removed, the registration or trip are still in place, but the original credit card payment is still posted to the account. So when I continue to commit that, and I can't reverse it, now the total payment amount is still $100, it's just not applied to anything. From here, you'll want to use a refund to soak up the credit with a note about the chargeback. So then posting the refund here will use that credit so it's not used to anything else and is posted as leaving the council purse. Another payment adjustment you can do is to just remove items.
Sorry, just a reminder, you would need to check out after doing that.
Oh, yes, I'm skipping a step. I shouldn't skip the step. Yes, you would need to check out to post the refund. All right. Modeling adding a good note. Okay. Another payment adjustment you can do is to remove items from an order or reduce the amount applied. These changes will create credit without changing the total payment. So let's go and look at one of those. Okay. All right. I've been making a lot of adjustments to this account. There aren't too many left for me to play with. Okay. Here we go. Here's one that I can play with. All right, so removing items from an order or reducing the amount applied can be done, and it will not remove those items from the registration or trip, but it will create credit without changing the total payment amount. So let's remove this $50 here. So that is going to be moving that $50 into unapplied funds on the account, and the dining hall that we removed is still on the registration. All right, so we'll save that to create the credit. And then that credit can be applied elsewhere in the system, or we can add the credit amount to the cart as a refund. And then we would, of course, check out to finalize that transaction and remove the credit fully from the system. All right, so let's look at how that kind of a reduction is going to appear on the audit log. And as before, give me just one moment to make a few quick adjustments to this. All right, so in the case of the reduction to the amount applied to the dining hall, that is going to be shown here as the item credit is created equals yes, and then the amount change is negative 50 for the amount removed from that, and then we posted the refund of negative 50 as the payment is leaving the building. With both of these, or with the credit refunded from the dining hall, my note and the auto-generated note are going to be on the in the notes for the cart order, which is the refund line. So that is showing me the note that I added as well as the auto-generated note.
And this is also a great example of where you might not have a note about where the credit was created, like the cart order where the credit was created, in this case the dining hall, because Annika obviously made this change outside of the cart. So a previous order was affected. The previous order that was affected is in column G, but that change did not happen through a cart process.
That's correct. Thank you, Moisha. All right. So that is how to use the credit convenience fee in managing the previous orders. So now I'd like to take a few minutes here to focus on the cart itself. So I am going to go into a group that has some items in the cart and just talk about that for a minute here. The Tentaroo shopping cart is a universal cart that can be used to register for any number of events, purchase products, sign up for classes, book facilities, and they can all go in the cart at the same time and be purchased with one transaction. So let's go through some of the elements of the cart, especially the ones that aren't exactly standard or that are admin only. So first of all, in the items box here at the top, you can use this arrow to expand this section and view all the items that are in the cart. This will include items for changes made to an event or a trip, or class registrations. Any of this can be in here even if no payment is in the cart at this time. Most of these items will have an edit button, a remove button, or both. And edit will let you go back to the registration or trip to make changes to what is being purchased or paid for. Removing an item takes it out of the cart and it cannot be undone. So if, for example, you just want to change the amount of payment in the cart for that item, you can use the edit option instead. Next, we have the financial summary box. And this shows the total amount in the cart for all of the items listed above. The total items amount may be different from the total payment line for two reasons. If the group has credit on file, that credit will be applied first. So the total payment will be less than the total items amount. In this case, my group doesn't have credit available, but if it did, there would be a value here. And you could turn on the use credit toggle would be on to apply that credit first. Admins have the option to turn this off. The end user won't see a toggle. They will just have to use that credit first. The other example of when the total items amount is different from the total payment amount is when the group has made an offline payment greater than their balance due. In that case, an admin can enter the amount of overpayment to the unapplied field and post the full payment to the user's account, creating credit that they can use for future purchases. So I could add $100 to this payment right now and pay $57.47.50 instead of $56.47.50. In this case, the total payment value is greater than the items in the cart.
Also, one use case where you may want to unselect use credit to specifically turn that off is if the group mailed a check in for their full balance due, not accounting for their credit on file. So that way, if they pay for their full $500 balance due for summer camp, you can log that in without applying the credit that they have on file.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the next section is the profile contact information. And thank you, Moisha. Then we have profile contact information. These contacts are the primary and alternate contacts from the group profile on the account. Any changes made here will update the information in the profile. Each system also has a set of options to make the phone number and address required at checkout. So if you want to make sure that your groups are entering that information for their primary contact, you can turn those on for your system, and then those fields will be collected if they aren't already filled out when they get to the cart. These settings are located under the main system settings, which will be covered in another webinar. All right, that brings me to the billing contact. Whenever an online payment is being made, the billing contact is required to help the payment processor verify the payment method. This defaults to the last used billing contact and cannot be changed after the order is placed. You can use the Copy from Profile button if this is the same as the primary contact on the account. Otherwise, the user or the admin will need to make sure that this gets filled out correctly for every online payment. These fields are not shown when no payment is being made or when an admin is applying an @council other payment. The last section is payment method, and this section has several tools, some of which are available to both admins and end users, but a lot of these are really only available for admins. First, we have the Send Receipt toggle. This is an admin-only field, and an administrator can choose to not send a receipt to the group at checkout. This also affects other automated messages such as new registration confirmation messages for events or trip change notifications. Turning this off is particularly useful if the admin is making a lot of changes all at once, or they're making a change the group doesn't need to know about at this time. Maybe you want to make all of your changes and generate a receipt from the back end, or just send them a fresh invoice once you've made all your changes. When you submit an order with Send Receipt turned off, your system contacts, event contacts, or facility contacts will still receive their notifications. Then we have the order date. And I talked about this a little bit before, but this will be shown to end users, but can only be changed by an admin. This field allows the council to backdate an offline payment to grant the group the earlier event rate based on the date of payment. The date the order is actually placed is still saved with a note that the order date has been modified. And then under payment type, the payment types in the cart for payments include, of course, credit card, and and each council determines which credit cards they accept through their authorized.net account, and then we enable those in your system. Some councils also use e-checks. You can opt in to using e-checks with authorized.net. And then in any of these cases, if you change your accepted online payment methods, let us know so we can update the settings to show the proper methods in your system.
Annika, could I ask a quick question about that?
Yeah.
Could you show me where I would submit a change to like either enable or disable e-check or change which types of credit cards I'm accepting?
Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So this is one of the Tentaroo managed features. So I'm going to go back to the admin manual and we'll go back to the home screen because it's easy to get to from here. So we have this card for the Tentaroo managed features. And then in this section, we have authorized.net. And some councils use Stripe as well. You can use the same form for both systems. And then you can use the button here to submit your credentials and any changes that you need made to your credentials, and let us know like when things are changing, when it goes into effect, and we'll get that updated for you in your system.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That was a good question. Let's see, I think it was over here. All right, the at council other payment method is an admin only option. This allows you to post payments received through the council office, such as physical checks, cash, unit account transfers, etc. This payment method should not be used for anything other than applying a payment to a purchase. If you have a discount or a council credit that you want to apply toward a registration, we have covered methods of handling those in the Camperships Discounts and Campsite Management webinar. And then last, we have the notes field. Actually, we have the receipt number field, which allows you to post the receipt number from your point of sale to connect the two systems for tracking purposes. And then we have the notes field. This field is available whenever an admin is placing an order and should be used to add details on transactions for future reference. This is an important feature of the checkout process as it informs users, fellow staff, and auditors of the circumstances behind administrative changes. As we've seen, these changes are included with the order and will be displayed on receipts, event invoices, trip notifications, and of course, the audit log. Also in the cart, we have a display of which payment methods you accept through the system. And if you update your payment methods with us, when we make those changes to the system, your payment method icons will change. And then you can update the policies to be specific to your council. And we talked about these in another webinar, but you can customize this for the policies that apply to your council system. And last but not least, place order. This finalizes any changes, and nothing you do in the cart is finalized until you place the order. And then all of your changes are locked in. Purchases are verified with availability in the system. That is the final button that you click on. All right. Today I covered everything from reading the audit log, handling refunds and convenience fees through previous orders, and just talking about the cart and what features are available to administrators there. If you have any questions about using any of the features I showed you today, please send us an email to support@tentaroo.com or schedule a training at admin.tentaroo.com/training.